bands marched down Dexter Avenue this morning, viewed by a sparse number of true parade fans who braved the 40-degree temperatures and brisk winds to watch the first blue-gray parade in several years. And it was a long one. About 12 bands, some from Florida and Georgia, along with cheerleaders and homecoming queens, marched along a route from the Crampton Bowl down Dexter Avenue and disbanded 3 blocks past the fountain. And the parade watchers stood for about 40 minutes to view the proceedings. Mayor Emery Fulmer was parade marshal. State senators and representatives had cars in the parade, but few passengers. The American Legion and the Alcazar Shrine had trains, and there were a few floats. The South was predominantly represented in this parade. Organizers of the blue-gray football game hope the South's predominance shown this morning holds over to this afternoon's traditional North-South football rivalry. Glenda Webb, WSFA TV News.
To some farmers, Act 135, which was passed in this building, will be a small blessing. Act 135 virtually reorganizes the way farmers can assess tax on their farmland. The act, part of the LID bill passed in a special session earlier this year, allows farmers to have their farmland appraised on its current use as opposed to its market value, which could be substantially higher. However, there are apparently very few farmers who are aware of the opportunity, and the deadline is quickly approaching.
I just talked with the Montgomery County tax assessor, Mr. Marvin Driver, and he says if the letter is postmarked by January the 1st, he will still accept the letter of intent, what the property will be used for. Now, what they should include in the letter is the use of the property, which was, the use of it as of October the 1st, 1978. They ought to have a description of the property and the uniform parcel number and the number of acres that's devoted to each of the following uses: row crops, pasture, and timber.
Now, what they qualify for is the sketchy part. Nobody connected with the county tax assessor's office or the Department of Revenue will allow themselves to comment on that act. Why? Well, there seems to be a question of interpretation of the act, and those in the buildings behind us won't even say exactly what parts. And the head of the Revenue Department, Carol Stow, who's out of town, has requested the Attorney General's office to issue an opinion on the exact interpretation of this act. When and if an opinion is issued isn't known. The confusion over the exact interpretation of this LID bill was predicted during the hectic special session which saw it passed, many of the legislators saying that this LID bill could provide us with many more headaches than solutions. At the state capitol, Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Well, yes, Janet, I read with interest Mr. Ling's statement where yesterday the President of the American Meat Institute that hamburger prices were going to go up extremely high. This is just merely one man's opinion and outlook from one group, and I really personally do not believe that the price of hamburgers are going to reach what Mr. Ling has predicted. The United States Department of Agriculture has estimated that overall beef prices in the United States this next year, 1979, would be about 10 to 14% more than they were in 1978. And perhaps hamburger meat would probably go up to about 20%. It went up at 45% in 1978, so it would probably go up about another 20% in 1979. I might want to add, too, that the fact is that there is no real shortage of beef in this country. The fact is that we just have less cattle now than we have had in the last few years. The beef demand is up extremely high, and the supply of beef is down. There is no shortage, there's no reason to panic, but we will have less beef next year, and we will have some higher prices in beef next year than we've had. But the reason for that is the fact that the cattlemen of Alabama and across the nation have just been going through 4 years of severe economic depression. They've lost money. The government has intervened by letting more imports come in, and we've had dry weather. And during those 4 years, the cattlemen just liquidated their cattle, sold off their brood cows, and now we are down to an extremely low number of cattle in the state, and that's the reason you're going to see beef prices go up in 1979, but not any more than anything else. And I think the thing that most important that we should tell all the consumers the fact that America is the best fed, best clothed nation in the world, and we are doing it, and we're spending less of our money than any other country in the world.
Well,
The first level is to continue at the present level that we're operating at now. That's for $132.1 million is what we have asked for there. Level 2 includes funds for program changes, possibly deleting old programs, adding new ones, that kind of thing, improvement of programs. For that we have asked for $139.8 million. Level 3, this is funds for added facilities, as they call it. Really what this is improvement to our old facilities, to the facilities that we have now. This is not building new facilities. For that, we have a total budget figure, which includes everything that we've asked for, of $146.3 million, which is the figure we've asked for.
Now, how does this compare to your budget of last year?
Last year, we requested $132 million, and we received $107.7 million. So, therefore, the $146.3 million figure is about a 35% increase.
Was this $107 million enough to meet operating expenses for last year?
Yes, Janet, it was. As a matter of fact, we had about a $1 million carryover. As you know, Commissioner Harden is a former finance director, and he says it's not wise at all to come down to the last day of the year with only 1 penny left in your budget. So we were rather proud to have a $1 million carryover.
Now, will this money have anything at all to do with the new center in Tuscaloosa?
No, Janet, what you're talking about there is the secure medical facility.
Right.
Now, this is something that the money for that is coming from a bond issue of $7 million. Of course, this $7 million would include grounds preparation, things like that. So we feel like right now we have about $6.1 million in capital outlay funds or bond issue funds to pay for that.
So
A Georgia man, Charles Littlejohn, has filed a suit in Georgia seeking compensation because he feels like he is not being fairly represented in his state by U.S. Senator Herman Talmadge. The suit has made it all the way to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans, where there the justices assigned it to federal Judge Frank Johnson's courtroom here in Montgomery. Justices in Georgia excused themselves from the case. Littlejohn is claiming that Talmadge's ethics are questionable. Presently, a U.S. Senate subcommittee is investigating allegations that Talmadge misused campaign funds and misused funds for the operation of his office in Washington. Littlejohn claims that he has a constitutional right to be represented by a properly elected official who has not committed any illegal acts and who has also not committed any acts which are in violation with a member's legislative responsibilities. He is also claiming that the investigative body looking into those allegations is self-serving and protecting, and therefore one of his motions seeks to have that investigation halted and an independent body organized to investigate the allegations against Talmadge. On the opposite side of the coin, Talmadge has filed motions seeking to have that case thrown out, saying the Senate investigation is plenty. Talmadge claims that a judicial intervention into that Senate investigation would be a demonstrable lack of respect for a coordinate branch of government. He says that that investigation is plenty and that it is protected by sovereign immunity. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
You don't have to know music. In fact, on a dulcimer shop in Mountain View, Arkansas, I saw a sign that said there ain't no notes on a dulcimer, you just play it.
Howard Anderson began making dulcimers in 1975 when his son showed an interest in having one to use as an ornamental hanging. His son said if it were playable, he would play it also. With the success of the first, Anderson has made 20 more and currently has 2 under construction. Also, he plans to make a hammered dulcimer, which is quite unlike the Appalachian instrument. The English dulcimer is struck with hammers and has many more strings. Anderson has spent many pleasant hours in his workshop creating the instruments and learning to play them, too. Mr. Anderson, how long have you been making these instruments?
Since 1975.
Where did you get the plan for an instrument like this, for this particular dulcimer?
This particular one came from Mountain View, Arkansas. This plan is more probably like the regular mountain dulcimers. It has more of a rustic look to it than the ones I've been building. This plan came from a dulcimer builder near Black Mountain, North Carolina. In his dulcimers, he carved a face in the peg head here, which was distinctive to his dulcimers. Anyone that saw that knew that he had made it. Well, since I wasn't accustomed to carving faces, I decided to carve something more simple and decided on a cross shape. And after I had made the cross in the peg head, I then said, well, why not make my sound holes also crosses? And then on the tail piece, I made it a cross too. Now on this one, the strings are fastened to pegs rather than coming through holes in my regular type in the tail piece. It's made out of 1/8 inch birch plywood. The top, the sides, and the back. The fretboard, the peg head, and tail piece are made of Spanish cedar. The fretboard is hollow from about this point up to here, which gives more box, hollow box to amplify the sound. Gives it better sound to have more hollow space in it, and also so that it can vibrate better.
Your different shapes then give a different sort of sound.
Yes, the size of the box would affect the sound.
Would it be easy for a person to learn to play one of these? How about somebody who already plays the guitar? Is there an easy transfer from one instrument to the other?
Well, that's one of the reasons I think dulcimers are becoming popular again, is because of the ease of playing. It was popular during the pioneer days when this country was being settled by the mountain people, because it was easy to play, it was easy to build, it was something they could build themselves. And anybody that can hum or whistle a tune, I believe, can probably get some kind of a tune out of a dulcimer. You don't have to know music. In fact, on a dulcimer shop in Mountain View, Arkansas, I saw a sign that said there ain't no notes on a dulcimer, you just play it. So it doesn't require knowledge of music. You can just play it by ear. You do your own thing. Play it to suit yourself.
Howard Anderson and his wife Margaret often play the courting dulcimer together, and they have performed for informal services and church picnics.
It's a rarity for a chimpanzee to be born in captivity, but that's exactly what happened at 9:45 Friday morning at the Montgomery Zoo. This is Jimbo, who weighed in at about 2.5 pounds. He's the center of attention for everyone at the zoo, especially for his 9-year-old mom, Liza. Both Liza and Papa Benji were raised by humans since infancy, so considering their lack of contact with other chimps, raising a young one is a totally new experience. Montgomery Zoo Information Officer Laura Strickland says Liza isn't the perfect mother yet, but she's trying.
So Liza has had absolutely no experience at taking care of babies. She doesn't know anything about it at all. But she has done a super good job. Yesterday she carried the baby around upside down all day long, but today she's got him up in the right position and the baby is eating properly. And she's just being a super good mother.
At maturity, Jimbo will weigh 125 pounds and can expect to live about 50 years. But for now, he'll stick close to Liza while she learns all about being a parent. This is Michael Jones, WSFA TV News at the Montgomery Zoo.
Battered wives, abused children, victimized senior citizens, and even husbands who are the victims of domestic problems. The people that Montgomery County District Attorney Jimmy Evans says are in need of a place of refuge. Why? Because they are also the victims of fear.
Fear one, fear that fear of the husband or the wife who's doing the beating. Fear of what will happen to them if they resort to a warrant. Fear of what will happen in the courts if they decide not to proceed. The whole syndrome is couched, surrounded, and compartmentalized by fear.
The source of refuge would be a domestic crisis center, a protected environment for those victims. Evans says consideration of such a facility has been around for several years, but with all efforts disjointed. Evans says the last session of the county grand jury directed him to help generate interest in the county in unifying these efforts, and that's what he's trying to do today at a South Montgomery Civic Club.
Everybody has a special service project they're working on, and they have a right to be proud of. But I'm telling you, here's one that the local people of Montgomery, Alabama can touch and feel, and it will have a dramatic impact on their lives. And all it takes is for good people like you to form committees, to work with your district attorney, to work with the grand jury committee, to try to tap local volunteer funds. Now, I'm not talking about going up here to the legislature, going to the county commission, the city council, and begging for money. Every time you turn around with a cause that you can see a need for, the first place you want to run is to the tax dollar. I'm saying yes, at some point it will have to be funded by a funding agency.
The financing of such a facility would have to come from the private sector at first, Evans saying that perhaps in the future some government funding could be possible. Evans predicts a near $250,000 a year operating expense, with the additional cost of a facility, be it built, bought, or perhaps even donated. Evans says he will soon be forming a committee for this unified effort, and those interested should get in touch with him. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
It's concrete blocks like these federal and state officials say are radioactive and may be emitting radon gas that can cause lung cancer. When the slag in the blocks deteriorates, the gas seeps into houses and the occupants are exposed to radiation. For more than 20 years, millions of the blocks were made using the radioactive slag. The blocks ended up in homes, office buildings, and other structures across the state. In 1975, the Tennessee Valley Authority was told to stop selling the slag because it was suspected of being dangerous. That was November 25, 1975. TVA continued to sell until last month when the government indicated it might take stronger action. State officials don't know how many people may be exposed to the radon gas or just how many buildings in the state may contain the hot blocks. Aubrey Godwin heads Alabama's Radiological Health Department. Godwin says even though the problem has the potential of affecting thousands of state citizens, his agency isn't properly equipped to handle the massive detective job required to check structures that may have been built with the radioactive blocks.
There's been really no check of a really complete nature of any house or building. There have been, a dozen or so buildings where it's sort of a spot check that really doesn't tell us that much information. There are some similar but not the same circumstances that occur in Florida and Colorado. These would indicate a possible problem, but not assured, and there's just nothing really has been done in this state for this particular problem.
How would a person know if they may be in danger of inhaling some of this radon gas that may be emitted from the decay of this radium?
Well, the average person just does not have a means to do this. As a matter of fact, we really do not have the means to do it right now.
The state of Alabama?
The state of Alabama does not have the equipment nor the personnel to do these tests right at this very minute.
Okay,
we're trying to work out something with some agencies to both borrow equipment, and we don't know what we're going to do about hiring people to do the test. It will take a year to run the test in a home to get a really reasonably accurate answer for that individual.
It would take 1 year per home?
Per home.
To determine?
That's right.
At this point, state health officials know that there is a problem of radioactivity in some concrete blocks. They know that some houses in south central Alabama and mostly north Alabama have been constructed out of those blocks. But they don't know how serious the problem is. So right now they are on top of a radioactive iceberg, not knowing how much of the iceberg there is or how deep it goes. The solution to the problem appears to be years away. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the State Health Department.
This is phosphate slag. It's radioactive. The slag is a byproduct of phosphorus furnaces operated here in Muscle Shoals by the Tennessee Valley Authority from 1934 until 1975. Millions of tons of the stuff was dumped and stored here. Millions of concrete blocks were made from the slag, as were concrete paving and building materials. Other firms bought it and made blocks from it. The white powdery substance contains minute traces of both uranium and radium. Each is a highly radioactive material. There lies the potential danger to humans. Scientists say the slag gives off radon gas, which turns into lead-210, a cancerous agent when inhaled. Dr. E.A. Blevin is Chief of Radiological Hygiene at TVA.
I don't think we could estimate exactly how many concrete blocks, because it is also used as a cement makeup. But in the cement makeup, it's about 3% aggregate in cement. I have heard estimations that there may be as many as 100,000 homes that could contain some of the concrete slag as a makeup in the block.
Placed near this wall, this Geiger counter clicks away radiation being emitted by concrete blocks at this building. The same blocks are believed to be in hundreds, maybe thousands of structures in Alabama. Radiation levels are known in this building, but many homeowners do not know that they are being exposed to the radioactivity, and the state doesn't know how many homes or people may be involved. The problem is now being discussed, and a task force has been appointed to seek some answers. But meanwhile, people living in structures built with the hot blocks are being exposed to the same cancer danger as an average smoker. And just like smokers, those exposed to the radon gas in the blocks, their chances of getting lung cancer are greater than people who do not smoke or those who do not live in houses where the blocks are. It all started when the price of slag was more desirable to manufacturers than clay. A slag cost $2.50 per ton, while clay brings $17.50 per ton. Now, clay is being used. The outlook for plans of action and reports on real hazards to those who may be exposed to the blocks is cloudy at this time. In our next report, where are all the X-ray machines in Alabama? Does anybody know? This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting. It has saved many lives. The X-ray is imperative to many diagnostic procedures. It's important to show doctors improper growths, tumors, and other foreign matter in the human body. Thousands of the X-ray machines are in use in Alabama. Thousands of X-ray pictures are taken each day in doctors' offices, hospitals, and in dental offices. There is a serious problem involving the machines. They are not being inspected as often as needed, and many are in operation and not registered by the state because officials don't know they exist. Aubrey Godwin heads Alabama's Radiological Health Division for the State Health Department.
In your opinion, as a person who is experienced in radiation technology, who is employed to protect the state citizen from this thing, is the Alabama citizen adequately protected from dangerous levels of radiation, medically and otherwise, because of funding situations in the state?
I personally do not feel comfortable with it. I think, you know, the people, I would think, would want more frequent inspections to ensure that they are, the equipment in use and the techniques in use are the proper ones.
Do you think the people are adequately protected from dangerous levels of radiation?
I don't feel comfortable with it.
All right.
That's more of a political decision. I think, you know, the people would have to decide whether they feel comfortable.
Isn't that playing a game with the health and safety in terms of being exposed to radiation?
It's whatever the people want to fund.
Is it possible that there are some radiation units, X-ray machines, that may not be properly connected or may not have the right person running them? And your people have not gotten around to them?
We know that there are units that have never been inspected in this state. We don't know of all the units, we don't believe.
I beg your pardon?
There are units in this state that we haven't inspected. We don't think we know where all the units are yet. We're still finding them.
You've got to be kidding.
No.
You're still finding them?
We're still finding units, yes, sir, that have never been inspected.
Did you find any of them that were leaking or not properly installed?
Yes, sir.
You did?
Yes, sir.
How long had they been allowed to operate before you found them?
In some cases, years.
Is it possible that there are people walking around who had been exposed to those units who got dangerous doses of radiation and don't know it?
There are people who got more radiation than they needed to get the diagnostic information, yes, sir.
You think they may have problems later on in life because of this?
That would be a statistical thing you'd have to develop, and, you know, it'd be very difficult to answer that.
In your opinion, does there exist a dangerous situation in the state in terms of adequate protection from overdose of radiation from units your people have not found and ones that are not adequately inspected?
You know, it's hard to answer. You don't know what it is if you don't know it even exists. It's hard to say.
Alabama's radiation level when X-raying patients is average or below average according to a national survey. But the long intervals of machine inspection remains a serious obstacle in the minds of those responsible for the radiological health of Alabamians.
At this point, 3 people inspect 3,000 X-ray machines that are registered here in the state of Alabama. This department needs 6 more persons that would adequately inspect the machines at regular intervals. The state legislature has been asked to provide funding, $100,000, to be able to hire more people. But so far, that body has turned a deaf ear to those requests. A person close to the situation says it may take a possible catastrophe, overexposure to X-rays, to wake the lawmaking body up to the potential danger in this situation. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the State Health Department.
Fire back here that apparently started in the area where they dipped the material in the paint to paint it. One of the workers said they'd spilled some metal spirits on the floor, and they just mixed up some paint, and he dropped a match back there and started a fire. And spread throughout the building. The building was pretty well damaged all over. We don't have a figure yet as to what the damage is, but it got almost all the building.